think that it is so important for direct reports to see their leaders not have the answer. I think it's so important for them to hear, I'm not sure what to do here. What would you do? Like, put the ball in their court and just see, let's talk it out. Like, let's be real with each other, and to just come down and be on an even playing field with people. That is true coaching to me, and getting there with them and problem solving together and just showing them that you're just as much of a human as they are. And just because you have this title doesn't make you any different or better than them. And I think it goes such a long way in trust building and relationship building whenever you can have those difficult conversations. And even if it's not I don't know the answer to this, maybe it's, hey, I don't want to have this conversation with you. This is hard for me too, but let's go there, right?
Yeah.
Like, have the hard conversation. Let's hash it out, not knowing necessarily like the next step to take in a process or whatever it is. I think just having that real raw vulnerability in front of people is so, so good for the soul.
Welcome to Manager, a podcast about the experiences of people leaders and how we can enable them to lead engaged, healthy, and high-performing teams. I'm Kamaria Scott, your host, and I'm thrilled to have you join us as we learn, lead, and succeed together. Hello, friends, and welcome to another episode of Manager. There are so many of us who have been managing for years, and over that time period, we have learned to master certain things of this role. There's so many lessons we've learned along the way. But aren't there things that you wish you knew on day one? Aren't there things that you wish someone told you as you were first stepping into the role? In today's episode, we're going to talk about all the things that we think that you, a new manager, should know as you take on this great responsibility. And so I'm so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Kaitlyn Rios. She has risen through the ranks of leaderships, but she's going to take us all the way back to the beginning. And we're going to chat about what it was like for her in the beginning and the things that she'd tell herself if she was starting all over again. Kaitlyn, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Would you tell the listeners a little bit about yourself? What do you do now? Your experience leading teams?
Sure. So my background is in physical therapy. I got my doctorate in 2015. I'm also a certified wound specialist. So basically, I've done a whole lot of education. But aside from that, I have pretty much been leading teams since my second job out of school. And as a physical therapist, we also lead our assistant teams. So really, even from my first job out of school, I was leading. But, I started off at that second job in a supervisory role, quickly went to manager. Then I hopped to another role where I was leading a national wound program. And so leading a national team of nurses, and then started working as a VP of clinical business development, where I lead and manage multiple different teams and wear many, many hats. So yes, definitely have climbed the ladder and seen it all. I've worked in anything from large corporations to startup organizations to privately held organizations. So it's been a wild ride, but a fun one.
Leading people, I would say, is definitely a wild ride. You have to buckle in some days because it's a lot. So let's talk about one of your early ahas. If you can go all the way back to just thinking about that first manager role, what was something that you found that you were like, this is surprising, and no one told me this?
Oh, this one's going to sound really dumb, probably to most people. And maybe I was just really naive and eager, but whenever I stepped into that first supervisory role, it was labeled wound clinic supervisor. So in my mind, it was going to be more of what I had already been doing in terms of building out a clinic and all the background operational things that I loved, writing processes and building EMR workflows and all of that fun stuff. And when I finally got to like the first day of being a supervisor, I was talking with my director, and she had mentioned something about like how I'm going to be interacting with my teams and the people that report to me. And I was like, wait. I lead people too. Oh yeah. It did not even dawn on me that this leadership role came with this responsibility of leading people. And that was my very first true leadership role. It just kind of like the light bulb went off. And turns out that was my most favorite part of leadership in that role. Now, the fact that that was never a major thing that was communicated to me is kind of shocking when you think about how young I was, how inexperienced I was. It may be a good thing to put that disclaimer out there if you are hiring a very young leader that, hey, you have to lead people.
Yeah, it's really funny because I do think that a lot of times when people become managers, that people leadership part sometimes is almost like an add-on. It becomes this thing that you're doing off the side of your desk, and you really have to reframe how you see the role to realize that no, this is actually the main job, and everything else happens around doing this. I do think that is probably the biggest shift that people don't realize, that when we say lead a team and you talk into being a supervisor, it's not like it's one of the things that you do. It's probably 80% of your time.
Yeah.
It's the thing. And we don't always articulate that as clearly as we probably could.
I don't even remember that being in the job description. Just lead people. Like
Yeah.
such an
Well,
afterthought. And it's so important. And you have to be so intentional about it in order for it to be upheld in the importance that it should be and held in the light that it should be. And just like you said, it's an afterthought. It's taken for granted. It's assumed that you know how to lead people. And I was just not in that place yet or that headspace. And thank goodness I was in that role because I fell in love with it. But had I not been the kind of person I am that loves people and loves to cultivate the excellence in people, it could have gone really bad.
oh, absolutely. And when I think about it, you mentioned job descriptions. When I think about it, I feel like there's always just sort of like one line that just says, lead the team, da da da. And there's like 3 or 4 or 5 different other bullets underneath that. And it doesn't really weight out how important that particular part is, or even that all the other bullet points to have to get accomplished have to go through leading the people. That's the part that I think people don't realize. The other thing is it is one hat that you wear in your role, because there are other hats. I think if I had to go back to when I was first becoming people leader, it was figuring out that it's more than one job.
100%.
Your experience too?
It's at least 4 always, right? Like there's a minimum of 4 because really, no matter what role you're in, there is sort of an administrative aspect to things. There is the people leadership aspect of things. There is the day-to-day work, whatever the work is that you're doing. There's the task-based work that you have to accomplish every day. Sometimes there's an operational aspect. Like it can just keep on ballooning outward. And that's so not really spoken of. It's just here's the job, here's the duties. And I don't think we think about how each little bucket of your job adds up to a lot of work. And sometimes they all can feel like a full-time job. And I think that's not spoken of either.
Yeah. So I agree. If I played it back, there's 4 different things. People management is a job. Admin work is a job. Your job is a job, whatever it is. And then project management is a job. And
Right.
that is hard because there's only so many hours in a day, but you do have 4 jobs to do. That's hard for people.
And I feel like the good leaders, and I tend to consider myself one of those most days of the week, I think the good leaders really do have to put some boundaries around their people leadership piece of their job in that bucket and protect that with all their might. And that means that the work part, the actual job part of your job, comes later. It comes after hours. It comes on weekends. It comes whenever it fits in around the part that really matters the most. And that's taking care of people. And so I found myself burning out really quickly because it was like, I wanted to put my people on a pedestal and protect them and guide them and lead them and do all the things I was supposed to be doing. And that meant work took a back seat to that. And so my work bled into 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, the next day, the weekend, whenever I could fit it in. And that was a recipe for disaster very early on in my career. But I pride myself in knowing that I could sleep at night because I knew I was taking care of my people. So
If I could go back to early me, I would tell her to be better about that balance with you, because
yeah.
that's absolutely right. I always tell people, look, I'm an HR girly. I work in HR. And I remember being in this meeting and we were talking about something we were rolling out. And I raised my hand. I said, who's going to do that? Like that thing you just mentioned, that step right there. Who's doing that? And somebody said, the manager's going to do it. And I said, I got to take off my HR hat for a minute and put on my manager hat. Because I got to tell you, I'm trying to do all the things that we're supposed to do as a manager, and it's killing me softly. I'm online from 6 in the morning to like 8 at night. And it's a lot to get done. It really is. And so we have to be careful and mindful before we say the manager can do it. We have to take stock of how many times we've said that sentence and how many things we've thrown over the fence at them. And I think as managers, we really have to be mindful to protect ourselves, because I think what ends up happening is that we do burn out and then people start to get the burnout version of us that is not pretty.
That's so true. Oh, yes. Protecting your time and protecting the to-do list. And I love that you say that. I love that you actually spoke up in a room when people were throwing things at managers and it was time to say, wait a minute, how much do they already have on their plate? Because so many people either are afraid to do that, don't do that, refuse to do that, think it's not their place to speak up and say no, or wait, or hold on, or let's think about this. So I really appreciate the fact that you said that. Thinking about the younger me and what I would have said or done differently regarding that is blocking my time, blocking my calendar more. I live and die by that now. If I don't have a block on my calendar, it's going to get taken up. And that is not work time. That's a meeting, that's a call, that's a whatever. It becomes pretty unproductive in terms of actually getting work done in the day. That's been a game changer, and something I never thought to do as a young manager is just protecting my time and being very staunch and steadfast about that and not being apologetic about it.
I think that's the part that started to shift for me as I matured as a manager, was being unapologetic about blocking my time, but also protecting my own capacity and well-being. Because I realized that I couldn't care for my team if I had not cared for myself. They would get the version of me. I remember being in a meeting and I hadn't slept. I had been up for like an insane amount of hours, and I snapped at someone on my team and I was like, oh no, I am so sorry. But then I was like, you need to log off and take a nap, sis. Like, get off these people's network and go rest and then come back and try it again. So I'm wondering, I know you personally focus a lot on toxic relationships or toxic workplaces. Do you think that some of the toxicity that exists is because people are burnt out and stressed?
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I mean, well, not 100%, but I definitely think that that is a root cause a lot of the times. It's oftentimes a mixture of the burnt out version of people because of, or in part due to, the type of culture that has been allowed to breed in a workplace environment. And I think that the more that we tolerate that mentality of just give to the managers will do it. Give it to the non-hourly employees. The salaried employees can handle it. They've got all the time in the world. It's not going to hurt their productivity, quote unquote. I think that mentality is what allows that burnout to breed in people. And it's so damaging and it's just not sustainable. And I think that we see the slow buildup to people breaking down as that is allowed to just perfuse through an organization or a team or a department. And eventually people break and they leave, or they get mad, or they get demoted, or they get put on a pip, or whatever happens, because that's again the culture is to punish when we can no longer handle it, instead of asking the question, hey, what happened here? And where did we go wrong? And what was the root cause? And really investigating what happened. I think it's just so often a recipe for disaster.
I would so agree with that. And I think if I was looking at root causes and I was thinking about like what I would go back and chat myself about, support is one that comes up for me.
Mm.
Have you seen that in your experience? Has support been an area where you feel like managers in general are perhaps struggling?
Oh, definitely. I think that lack of support is the norm versus what we should be seeing, which is everyone should have support. Everyone as a manager should have someone superior to them, helping them learn how to be a better manager, better leader, helping them learn tools and cultivate different leadership styles that suit them and suit their team. I just don't see that being the norm. I definitely worked in organizations where we would have offsite leadership trainings and stuff, but even those were some of the most toxic ones that I worked in because it felt like a facade. So I think that's the other piece of it is, even where there is support, is it carried through in a way that's meaningful, or is it just a checklist to keep the organization? I feel like they had some really high quality, high caliber leadership training that I thoroughly enjoyed. I don't think it was pervasive enough and didn't show up the next day after the training enough to really even make a difference.
I agree with you. The support has dwindled over the years. One of the things that you and I talked about in our prep call was I remember when we used to have a department assistant, we had an admin. Everybody had an admin, right? And so if you needed to schedule something, you just, hey, can you do X, Y, and Z? And magically it happened. Calendars were managed. And then I remember like slowly but surely the admins went away, or only very senior people had admins. Or I remember thinking like, there used to be my favorite HR person that I would call for if I needed something. And it's almost like watching that support dwindle. And so I think for me, if I had to go back, a key point that I tell myself is to build your own support system.
Yeah.
Like really focus on relationships and
Mhm.
really build your own support system, because Michelle will still take your call.
Right. Exactly.
And I think I'm like, find your own support system. Be so deliberate about seeking out, like you said, that manager above who's going to help you find your way. I
Mhm.
just think that thinking through how your support system works is important. It's probably one of the first things I would tell someone to do as a people leader.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think you can't say that enough. Honestly, it's finding who you can trust in your circle, because I have had support systems fail where I thought there was trust and there wasn't. So finding out who you can trust. And I think that support it can mean so many things. It can be task based, it can be emotionally based, it can be leadership and mentorship based. There's so many different aspects of that you could explore. But regardless of who and how you're building that support system, just make sure there's trust.
Yeah. Can we pause there for a minute? I think that's worth talking about.
Yeah.
We need to find trusted advisors, trusted support as a people leader. Why is that so important?
I've had that trust broken many times. So I've learned it the hard way. Just by my nature, I am a quick to trust, quick to think that there's good in all of us type of person. And that's burned me several times.
Yeah.
I've definitely developed a tougher outer shell over the years, and just learning the hard way, kind of putting my walls up a little bit. But I think that trust is so critical, because it's a two-way street, right? Like, I
Mhm.
think you have to show that you are trustworthy just as much as you need to see that in someone else. When we can show that we are a trustworthy person to someone else, it just helps build camaraderie within an organization. And it helps build sustainability in a way. I think it also helps to build the humility that exists between us all and helps us relate more to each other as humans. And I think that alone can cultivate so much more, whether it's a trusted relationship or a mentorship or fill in the blank, right? Just having trust with somebody is such a root to so much more in terms of relationship development that
Yeah.
should not be ignored.
I would agree with that. And when I think about why trust is so important to me too, it's because there's a lot of vulnerability in being in a leadership role and being a manager. I think sometimes people think that you have all the answers. They think that because you're in this elevated position, you've got it all together. And there are times when you're literally like, I don't know what to do.
Mhm.
I don't know how to handle the situation. I think about all of the firsts that I ran into as a people leader that I was not prepared for. My first employee relations complaint, my first team member that had a mental health challenge, my first layoff that I went through, and I had to separate someone from the team and tell the team that I had to let someone, like, there's so many firsts that you go through. And I think that if you don't have a trusted person to talk to,
Mhm.
a lot of that sits with you.
Yeah.
For me, it was like a lot to start to work through, and realizing that people leadership can be lonely sometimes.
Oh, absolutely, it can. You're so right. And I'm curious, as you say that, were all of those things brought to you because you were an HR professional or not?
No.
Okay, I was gonna say, because that's another bucket to add to the list, is being an HR professional, even when you are not trained or equipped to necessarily be an HR professional. Because so many
Yes.
issues are HR issues, right? They
Yeah.
sound
Yeah.
and man, they are not. They don't go to HR. They go to their manager.
That's absolutely right. I mean, people, they think you are the first point of contact, right? Like you're their manager. And that's the other part, is that we go back to the many hats that we wear, and we kind of bucket it into like four, but in that people leadership hat, there's many hats: therapist, coach, because getting the best out of people is not just giving them tasks. You've got to really know what it takes to bring out the best in them. And that means that sometimes you have to also navigate all these other things that come along with the relationship that you have with other humans.
Absolutely. Well, and I think going back to what you were saying before about trust and vulnerability, I think that it is so important for direct reports to see their leaders not have the answer. I think it's so important for them to hear, I'm not sure what to do here. What would you do? Like, put the ball in their court and just see, let's talk it out. Like, let's be real with each other, and to just come down and be on an even playing field with people. That is true coaching to me, and getting there with them and problem solving together and just showing them that you're just as much of a human as they are. And just because you have this title doesn't make you any different or better than them. And I think it goes such a long way in trust building and relationship building whenever you can have those difficult conversations. And even if it's not I don't know the answer to this, maybe it's, hey, I don't want to have this conversation with you. This is hard for me too, but let's go there, right?
Yeah.
Like, have the hard conversation. Let's hash it out, not knowing necessarily like the next step to take in a process or whatever it is. I think just having that real raw vulnerability in front of people is so, so good for the soul. Everybody needs that. And I always felt better as a leader when I had those moments too. It was like, oh, I just got to breathe and like be myself and show them that I have weaknesses too, and that's okay.
One of the things that just came to me as you were saying that was the realization, as you said, just because I have this title doesn't make me different from you.
Right.
And I remember a different episode that I did with the COO, and she said the same thing. You start to realize that you need your team as much as they need you. So I think when people think about managers, they think there's this hierarchical thing that happens. But again, you're sort of this upper being who's infallible, who has all the answers, who can do all the things. And the reality is you're a version of person who stepped into a position in the org chart, but there's still things that you're not good at. There's still things that you're struggling with. There's still things that you may or may not need help with. And I think about this team that I had that I just love to pieces. And I remember I am absolutely not your project planning spreadsheet girl. Like, I just makes my eyes glaze over. I was visiting one of my team members in Wisconsin, and we were sitting outside eating custard one day, and I was talking about this project we needed to bring to life. And she's like, well, who's managing that? And I was like, girl, me. It's just struggling. And she's like, oh my gosh, I love it. I can do that for you. And I was like, what?
Oh,
It's amazing, because the vulnerability to admit that it was not my strength open the door for her to come in and be like, I can help you with that. And I think that when we trust our team members with our vulnerability, they can also step in with their strengths to help us. And then collectively as a team, we get better.
absolutely. Well, and that comes full circle to what we were talking about earlier, is like to tell my younger self that it is okay to delegate things that you are not either a huge fan of, someone's much better at it than you, or maybe you just have a lot of questions and it could get done faster with somebody more experienced. Like, ask away, be vulnerable, say, I don't know, and use the team that you have. And sometimes it's not even within your own team. Like, I ping my analysts all the time because I'm like, you're a bazillion times faster at Excel than I ever am going to be. So I'm going to have you help me with this because it's got a deadline and I need some help fast. And they're like, yeah, I'll whip that up in 5 seconds where it would take me 2 hours. So I think just knowing your people, knowing what makes them tick, being able to say, I'm not great at that, or I don't love it, and just being vulnerable enough to allow that to come in and support you is so critical. And I never would have done that earlier on. I would have struggled through it and worked into the wee hours of the morning and made it happen and just pretended like I had it all together. And I rarely had it all together.
Why do you think the managers do that? Well, I'm just curious. It's very common, right? It's very common for us to just be like, I will shoulder it all. I will do it. What do you think drives that?
I think it might go back to what you were saying before about the position on the org chart. And we are just as guilty, I think, as managers of thinking of ourselves of like, I am in this elevated role and with this title, and I have to perform. I have to show everyone that I can handle it. I have to show everyone that I'm good enough. And I think that we hold ourselves to that high standard to show and, I don't know, project some sort of competence around all the things, which is just silly when you really think about it. Like, no one's good at everything. And I think that's, again, a cultural thing that we've developed in ourselves over time. And that's the mentality that's bred and accepted amongst organizations. Do I agree with it? Heck no. Like, looking back, it's ludicrous to think that we treat ourselves that way, and we hold ourselves to these high standards that are just really sometimes unattainable. And even if they are attainable, it's not in any sustainable kind of fashion. So yeah, I think it's a mixture of a lot, but to me, I think that I've definitely changed my mentality around that. And I am no longer a person who's afraid to ask for help or to say I have a question or just say I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I'm human. You're
Yes.
human.
That is it. I think that even to add to that, there's something about being willing to give yourself grace. That's what I wish I had told myself earlier. Give yourself grace. It is okay if that project is not at 110%. It is okay. Because the other part of that is managing you is different from managing a team. I wish that's what someone had said to me. Because I think when you are just managing yourself, a lot of us get promoted because we're high performers. And so when you're managing yourself, it's almost like you have control over all the things because you are all the things, right?
Right.
Like, you know, your energy, you know what you can do, you know, your capacity. And then you step into this thing and you, like you said, you first want to acknowledge that there's 4 different jobs that you now have, some of which you may or may not be great at. So you're still on a learning curve for some of them. And you have all these people now that you also have to learn. And so there is something about giving yourself grace and acknowledging your own humanity, because if you're able to do that, you can also do it for other people.
Right. Well, and you, as a leader, you set an example, right? So if all they see is you burning yourself out constantly, they're going to think that's what you expect of them. And I know a lot of times that was not really my mentality at all. I gave them all the grace and never gave myself any. And I set the wrong example though. So I think that it's a huge deal to make sure that the way that you lead, the way that you work, the boundaries that you hold, what you do for yourself is fully acceptable of your team as well.
Yeah, that is probably one of the things that I did learn early on. And I'm grateful that I learned early on, which was as a people leader, you are the epicenter of your team's culture. In all of the training that I have done for managers and all of the leadership training that I have done, I don't know that anyone has ever clearly articulated that sentence. You like it's not just what you say, but it is so much what you do and the tone that you set. And one thing that I noticed is that, like, again, if I laugh on a call, other people laugh on the call. If I am buttoned up on a call, they're going to be buttoned up on the call. And so just that awareness of whatever they see me doing, whether I expressly say it or not, they're going to follow suit because I have that positional power. And it's so important to me to be mindful of that.
Right. Oh, that's so true. I love that. I lead a nonprofit organization, Face with Grace, to support women who are going through toxic work environments and just help them to see a way through, a way out, and how to become a better leader or a stronger leader that really breeds just a positive culture and acts as that epicenter of healthy culture for people. And we call it being a luminous leader or leading with luminescence, and just being the one within your organization, even if it's dark and toxic and negative and just all the things that we hate about bad workplaces, you can still be a guiding light to people and you can still radiate a positive leadership style. You can radiate a positive example. You can radiate that grace for not only yourself, but other people. And I think that's just so important for young leaders, especially to recognize that you have that power, no matter what title you hold, no matter where you're sitting in an organization, how old or how experienced you are, you can be that for yourself and for other people all the time.
I love it. And we'll definitely make sure in the show notes we have a link to that so that the other people who might be interested can check out a little bit more. So what else? If we had to go back and talk to your younger self, what else would you share that you think is pivotal now that you're looking back at it?
I would say keep an open mind. I think, going through college and grad school and everything, I think college, I heard this more than I ever did after grad school, but in college, everyone says you're never going to end up doing what your degree says you're going to do, right? I heard that all the time. As you go into grad school and you get a doctorate and stuff, you get a little bit more niche and you kind of wind up doing what your degree says you're going to do because that's just what people do. And I have changed what I do and how I do it so much since graduating with a physical therapy degree. I no longer am treating patients at the bedside, and I'm okay with that. And I think that my younger self would have been like, what is wrong with you? You went to all this schooling and you did all this work to become a physical therapist. Why are you doing a physical therapy job? Like shaking myself. But I look back and everything I've done, including my education, including all of the physical therapy type of roles that I held, made me the kind of leader I am today. And it gave me so much experience and so many transferable skills that I wouldn't change a thing by any means, but I would go back and tell my younger self that, hey, you may not always be on this exact path that you think you're going to go down for the rest of your career. And that's okay. Like, don't let it freak you out. Because there's definitely been pivot points in my career where me and my husband look at each other like, I don't know, this feels weird. Or, man, that's really niche. Are you sure? And here I am, it's all good. I'm thriving and getting to do things that I never thought I would do. And it's awesome. So, I tell those younger managers to just look at life as blank slate, and you can do anything you want with it. No matter what your degree says or what jobs you've held, you can write your own adventure.
Oh, I love that. Because I think what that also reminds me of is there is no definitive answer.
Right.
And I think when you understand that, I think it changes how you lead as well. There is no definitive answer. You have to get used to the answer is gray sometimes and maybe.
Yeah.
And you have to push forward even when you don't know what the answer is. You just have to declare there's an answer.
Yeah. And there's not always going to be a person you can turn to that gives you this like clean cut, yes, you're doing this the right way, or no, you're doing it the wrong way. There is so much gray and there's just so much ambiguity around it all that you as the leader have to be the one to make a concrete decision, even if it's less than concrete at all. It's kind of wild, terrifying, but it makes it kind of fun because you never really know where you're going.
You don't.
Yeah.
And I think like that's one of the things I struggled with. And I have to say, I love this conversation because we don't often talk about looking back, like we've grown. But that's one of the things I struggled with because, as a person who also loves a good degree and loves school, like I love an A more than anything in the world.
Me too.
I love an A. And then you start leading people and you realize the A is non-existent, right? There is no right answer. There's so much subjectivity in leading people and figuring out how things happen in an organization that you have to get used to knowing that you're going to have to make a decision. There may not be an immediate feedback loop to tell you whether it's right or wrong, or even enough information to make the best decision you could make. But at some point in time, you have to learn how to trust your gut and go with what you know. And that was probably the hardest shift because if you don't learn how to balance that need for the right answer with no, we have to move forward. It doesn't really matter. Keep going. Then it can be a difficult role to be in.
Absolutely. And I'll tell you mine and then I want to know what yours is. But like my version of an A today, a leader, it always is rooted in truth and being able to sleep at night. If I can do those two things, if I can be truthful to my teams, that often means being transparent, sometimes when I should be, sometimes when I shouldn't be. And I can go to sleep at night knowing I served my people well, I treated them fairly, I treated them with truth, and I did the job to the best of my ability based on those things, I've got an A. And if somebody else wants to come along and tell me they don't like that, I've got an F, or they don't want to see me anymore, I'm still okay with that because in my mind, it's an A. And I can go to another place with another employer, with another team, whatever, and still lead that way and still sleep at night and still get that A that I can live with. And that's another thing I would have told my younger self is never compromise your morals, your ethics, your core belief system, because that is everything. That is your A.
Yeah.
Curious, like, what do you feel like is your A that you live and die by?
It's so funny because I was literally just reading something from one of my old teams, and one of my sayings is always look for the and. And for me, that basically means like, am I balancing relationships and results? Am I meeting people in the middle? Am I finding a middle ground? Because you cannot win every battle. And you have to really learn as a people leader, you have to learn to pick your battles. There's sometimes when I have to say, this deadline is going to slide because my team has too much on their plate. There's not enough resources. I'm going to have to go in there and tell somebody, unfortunately, the result's not going to happen. So sorry. There's times when I have to go to my team and say, listen, y'all, we're going to have to buckle down. We're going to have this hard conversation. But I never sacrifice one for the other.
Right.
I'm never going to run my team in the ground in order to meet some arbitrary deadline. I'm going to ask myself, is that a real deadline? And did I set that for myself? But at the same time, I'm also not going to neglect the things that pay us because we all like to work.
Absolutely.
We all like to eat and not live under a bridge at the same time. And so I think, like, for me, it has always been, am I really balancing the situation so that we're doing what's best for the company and I'm doing what's best for each individual person on my team? I'll never ask them to sacrifice themselves for the company, but I'm also not going to allow us to not do our due diligence at the same time. So I think for me, that is always the A that I'm searching for. Like, how do we do good work, but how do we make sure people feel good about the work, feel good about the team experience? I always tell people, when someone leaves Team Kamaria, I want them to be like, I learned so much that I can go do whatever I want to do and I can
Right.
go the next chapter of my life. That's what I want from my teams always.
Yes. Oh, I love that. That's so good. And yeah, I mean, I think that's kind of what I mean when I have to get overly transparent with somebody because there is a business to still run. That doesn't change ever, right? Like that's always going to be humming in the background of people leadership. You've got to be real with people and you've got to keep it straight. And I think so many times that, and this is one of the most frustrating things about climbing that career ladder is things get more and more transparent to you, but then you see how much lack of transparency there is to the team beneath you, like the people reporting to you. And it drives me nuts. It's like, if we all knew this information, though, how much better would we be? How much more productive would we be? How much more strategic would we be in our approach with our day-to-day work if we all were in the loop? And I think that's where I struggle. Like I've got a big mouth and sometimes it gets me in trouble, but also like I feel like it serves my teams well and we do better work because we know more about what we're dealing with.
See, I think that's the seasoning that happens as you progress as a people leader because we are taught to toe the company line, right? It's like you're a leader. And so if someone says, this is the marching order, this is the message, we're all supposed to just cascade it down. And I think when you do become more seasoned, you realize that, like, sometimes yes, sometimes no. You get that discernment about when you do need to just be like, this is what I can tell you and this is what I can't tell you. But also, like, I would laugh at my team sometimes because they're like, I get a look on my face and they know I'm saying so much more than my words are saying. And so you learn how to communicate things because you don't want to jeopardize the trust that they have in you.
It's such a balance and it's such a gray area, right? Like I love that you had like a look in your eye, and I feel that to my core because I have definitely led teams where I could give them a look that said everything they needed to know without me saying a single word.
Yes, yes. I think that's where the maturity comes in. When you start to realize there is that gray. When I was leading a program for managers, our motto was be the change, which resonates with your be a luminescent leader. I love that because I would be like, you have to be, even if the organization is not being it, you need to be it for your team. You have that power to create a team. And so for me, the ability for them to trust that I had their best interest at heart meant that I had to know when to be transparent and when to say, look me in my eye. What does this mean? Right. If I couldn't tell them something overtly, they trusted that I was taking them into consideration. I think that's why when we talk about what does an A mean, to build that trust that they know that I'm going to think about their needs, that they understand if I can't tell them something, I'm still thinking about how that factors into what they need as well. And so they're still being considered. And I think that's what makes me sleep at night, to know that I continue to earn that trust and be trustworthy to them.
Yeah. And like you said, you definitely have to reciprocate the trust that you're getting from your upper level leadership as well. That's why trust is so important. And I love that you're kind of loop that in, even if you can't say all the things you want to say. They know that you have their back. You are trusted. They are trusted. Everyone is in a circle of trust and they feel safe. That's a huge part of workplace environments. If you can create a safe feeling for your teams, they will go to the moon and back for you because they feel protected and they feel like they have a shield around them when they need one and they feel empowered when they don't. That's such a cool thing when you can see a team be emboldened that way and just feel like they can thrive. Oh, it's beautiful.
That's one of the reasons why, of all the 4 jobs that a manager actually does, the people leadership part is my favorite part too, because that is how I see the role. I see it as like I am a safety net underneath you. And so if you want to go do this wild, crazy thing and try something new, I got you. It's going to be fine. If you fall down, oops, that happened. Let's learn from it and keep going. But you have to be able to cultivate that. And I think that's what really good people leaders do. And so if I was going back, way back to the beginning, I would say, be that person that people want to work for because they know that they're going to get somebody who really truly cares about their success. And if you can just prioritize that, everything else will fall into place.
Absolutely.
This has been the best conversation ever. Thank you so much for joining us. And I want to thank you on behalf of the listeners, because there are so many people who step into people leaderships and we never get to have these really candid conversations about what the job really entails. So thank you for that. And listeners, if you want to just take something away, I want to give you just a couple of things. Think about the 4 different roles that we talked about: people management, admin, day-to-day, project management. Make sure you're in balance with those things. Make sure that you're giving space to your team. Make sure that you are doing those things. And if you're not, don't be afraid to have a conversation with someone so that you're protecting your own capacity and your own well-being. If you are burnt out, you're not doing a service to yourself or your teams. Remember to find a support system for yourself. Just like you're going to be a support system for your team members, you need that too. So find your favorite HR friend, find other managers, but definitely find a support system of people you can trust to be on the journey. And then get used to being uncomfortable. You get used to there not being an answer, because that's really what the role is. But you will find your way, we promise. And so, Kaitlyn, if people wanted to reach out to you, if they wanted to learn more about your nonprofit, your organization, is LinkedIn the best way for them to do that?
LinkedIn is one great way, but the easiest way, the most direct way, is through my email, and that is connect@facedwithgrace.org. And going to your support system. If there's not someone you feel like you can trust within your organization, Faced with Grace is a great lifeline for that. So we're a great external resource for you to use should you need support.
I love it. Well, on behalf of the listeners, thank you for your time with us today. And listeners, thank you for being with us. We will see you the next time on Manager to Manager. Until then, take care of yourselves and each other.